Parenting is one of the most profound things that we can do, and it can also be one of the loneliest. We're all doing it, but so many of us are doing it in isolation, wondering if everyone else has it more together than we do. And that's exactly why my colleague Sam and I created Seen Circles, a place online where parents can come together to feel genuinely seen and heard. Think of it like a compassionate parenting village online, where you can drop in and out whenever you need some listening or support. Each circle is facilitated by a skilled person, and some sessions explore a specific theme, while others are simply a space to share what's been on your mind, what you've been navigating, or what's felt hard lately. Circles run at different times throughout the week to suit everyone's schedule, and there's no pressure to share. But research shows that when we tell our stories and hear from others, it helps us feel so much less alone. Everyone gets the opportunity to speak, but you can simply listen if that's what you need. It's not therapy, and it's not about fixing anything. It's just about not doing this alone. And the feedback? Well, parents are telling us they feel less isolated, more supported, like they're actually learning something along the way. So you can join for one session or sign up for more. Think of it as an investment in your mental health as a parent. If you'd like to join a Seen Circle, head to seencircles.org and sign up today. We would love to have you.
The human experience, with our flaws, our passions, our triggers, our inspirations, and our imprints. If we could see behind everyone's story, then perhaps what we would have is deep compassion. In this podcast, I get the chance to explore these stories from some truly fascinating people in some honest and heartwarming conversations. And best of all, I get to share these discussions with you. I'm Lael Stone, and this is Humans Being.
Welcome to Humans Being. I'm Lael Stone, and my humanness for this week, well, it comes to you from sitting in a beautiful, hot magnesium bath with a group of women. A few days ago, I went to this beautiful bathhouse with some friends of mine, and we were sitting there soaking and talking all things as women do. And we were reflecting on the growth that happens when we are, young girls, and, as we go through motherhood and then into this elder stage in my life. And we were talking a little bit about what it's like when we're young and the competition that we can often feel with other women. And we were cackling and laughing together, the three of us. And as I sat there, I was just really reflecting about the powerful growth that comes through being a woman, and about how we can, move in and out of those spaces where we compare ourselves, where we feel like we don't belong, where we're looking at other people thinking they're doing it better, getting it right, all that kind of stuff. And yet, for me, I think as I'm getting older, what I'm realizing is that when I see women winning and achieving and standing in their power, then that is a win for them, but it's a win for me. And it was so beautiful to actually just connect together with my beautiful friends and reflect on that growth that we all experience as young maidens into mother, and then as we get older, of what it is to honor those phases, but also just to really take note of the people around us, and especially the women who walk beside us. So that is my humanness for this week, as I just, had a weekend of connecting with some female friends. And for those of you, who are listening that have or are lucky enough to have a friend or two that walks beside you, maybe this is a beautiful invitation just to let them know what you mean to them in their world. Now, that happened on the weekend, and now I get to sit here and record an interview with a woman that I would love to sit in a hot bath with. That sounds weird.
Sounds perfect.
It is my absolute honor to have with me Gina Chick. Hello, Gina.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you. I'm going to start by just telling everybody, if they don't know who you are, which I'm sure they do, I'm going to just read out a tiny little bit about Gina. Gina grew up in Jervis Bay on the south coast of New South Wales, a self-described strange kid with a stronger affinity for animals than people. She was ostracised at school but found herself at university in Sydney, discovering her community in the queer scene and the heady world of 1990s dance parties. Love that. What followed was a life of extraordinary texture, training as a rewilding facilitator, teaching 5 rhythms dance meditation, and building Wild Heart, a program helping adults and children reconnect with nature as a path to inner authority. At 40, she discovered she was pregnant and was simultaneously diagnosed with breast cancer. Her daughter Blaise was born a healthy little cherub, but Blaise was later diagnosed with the same disease and died at 3 years old. Gina went on to survive 67 days alone in the Tasmanian wilderness in the depths of winter, winning Alone Australia Season 1 in 2023. Her debut memoir, We Are the Stars, traces all of this and more, and this book won the ABIA Matt Rochelle Awards for Best New Writer of the Year and topped the Dymocks Top 101 list, the first non-fiction book ever to do so. Gina is a storyteller and a magic weaver, and I am so excited to be here with you. Before I kind of jump into all the things I'd love to talk about, when you go back to being that kind of young maiden, did you have those feelings of comparison with others? I mean, I know now what a champion of women that you are, but when you were younger, was that something that was challenging for you?
I think that that is actually inherent in human development. I think that we look to first of all we look to our parents to teach us how to be in the world, and what our values are, and what the culture is asking of us as in terms of behavior and in terms of value. And then when we go to school, suddenly that expands, and now we have the gaze of others, and our kind of like our tribal impulse means that we now start to look to other people for that input and that information. And so I think that comparing ourselves with others is actually a normal part of human development. But where it sort of comes unstuck is that our culture doesn't give us the tools to process our emotions, and also to build the internal authority and internal robustness to be able to make those comparisons, and also have a voice that says, yeah, but this part of me, the part of me that's me, is still okay. And so I think that's where our culture really comes unstuck, and that then turns into a point of real pain and suffering for, I think, most people when they're growing up.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's, I know for me, I really relate to that. My currency was, or the thoughts or beliefs in my head were often, well, if that woman's winning or she's doing better, then there's not enough space for me, or I want to be there. And I really began to turn it all around whenever I would start to feel jealous or compare. I turned it around to, that is actually something I desire. So it became more about, if I'm jealous of what that person's doing, maybe I can move that towards, that's actually something I would love to do. What a beautiful beacon of possibility that person exists, that person stands in, and that is something that maybe I want to move towards, which felt a bit better, instead of the whole, why do they have it and I don't, to actually that is something I desire. But it's a tricky part of, growing up, isn't it? When we're sitting in that not enoughness.
Well, also because our, extractive capitalist society and economic structure means that everything that, like in our value system, is about achieving something. It's about an outcome. And so, success is measured in certain ways. We are given the reflections of how we should look, how we should think, how we should act. And for me, the voice of should is never my voice. When I hear the voice should, it is the voice of someone else or something else that I've internalized. So when I hear should, it's like, well, should is masking a need, and so should is telling me I'm not okay the way I am. And again, for me, this is a cultural problem. Like, this is part of the culture that we are embedded into. That idea of scarcity, that lens of scarcity. It's like, well, if someone has success, then there's not enough to go around, so I won't have it. I find really problematic because in sort of the world that I live in, every single person has an amazing gift to bring to the world that is theirs. And, life is an opportunity to explore and express that in whatever form, it it arrives, and those gifts are designed to give back to culture. They're designed to use our creativity to express what's going on inside us. They're completely personal and unique, and they mean that someone else who's going through something might find benefit, or they might find help, or they might find recognition in whatever that is. And so success stops being about what I have achieved and instead becomes, what is the story that I'm here to tell, and how can I express that into the world in the way that feels pure and true? Like, when I look at the world through those eyes, there is no success, there is no failure, there is no mistake, there's only lessons, and every single step is just another one towards a more full expression of whatever that creativity is.
I love how you speak that, because it's the thought of success that actually keeps people often pretty crippled in not actually doing something, of not taking the risk, of not being creative, of not getting out there, because that whole expectation is, but what if it isn't a success, and what if it doesn't work? Then, how am I going to deal with that? Whereas, I agree with you. I have always jumped in and gone, I'll figure it out. There's got to be a way to do this. No matter what, I'm going to learn something. And I realized, it takes a lot of courage sometimes to do that. But I think that is where the gold often sits, because no matter what, you are going to grow. And I agree with you. That is the whole purpose of really why we're here, isn't it? Just to keep unveiling and revealing the truth of who we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's purpose is their purpose. Like, I think I find that it's really easy to go into generalizations, and I'm wary of saying what anybody else's purpose is, but I do know that for me, it feels like a healthy way to move into a world where nourishment becomes part of the journey, instead of, taking on this idea that the only way I can measure my success is through the eyes of others, or through the lens of someone else's judgment. And that's the bit that I find really problematic. And I think that's something that isn't inherent in us. That belief isn't inherent in us. So the way I move through the world is with a deep relationship with my own internal authority. And for me, that's what wildness is. It's not outsourcing our authority. It's being able to solve the challenges in front of us with what we have inside, and being able to find what we need inside ourselves, instead of, needing someone to rescue us or tell us what to do, or, or define who we are through their lens and through their beliefs. And I just find that that's a very kind of dangerous and problematic quality that our culture gives us, that then makes it very hard for us to find our own validation when, we're measuring ourselves against stories that are actually impossible to live up to. And so, yeah, it's like, for me, purpose is incredibly personal. Everybody's got a different one. But when we sort of flip that lens to focus on how we can nourish ourselves, how we can find our own purpose and our own meaning, rather than looking to outside stories and outside validation to tell us what it is, for me, that then becomes a pathway to a life that works.
Mm. Do you feel that your upbringing or the way your parents raised you planted those seeds in you, or is it really through the adversity of life that you have come to that place now?
I think it's both. Actually, I'm so lucky. Oh my God. My parents and my family are just amazing. Both of my parents are teachers, and their way of teaching isn't to give answers. Their way of teaching is to ask questions. And so all three of us then would have to find out whatever the answers were. And it just meant that we got set up from the youngest age to be able to rely on our own internal problem solving, our own judgment, to take risks and learn from the mistakes, and hurt ourselves to learn not to, and, to grow wise from experience rather than to take on a whole bunch of knowledge and call ourselves smart. And so mum and dad definitely did a lot towards that. And the other thing that they did was they absolutely supported whatever we wanted to do creatively. If it was art, if it was music, if it was dance, whatever it was, we were just given every opportunity to express those sides of ourselves. The trust in our risk-taking, the trust in our ability to solve our own challenges, the tools to be able to do so, and also foster our creativity. That was all a huge part of my upbringing and is definitely woven in there. But then to be able to take that, and also I think that it's also part of my nature anyway. I think that they added compost to seeds that were already there. But then the way I responded to adversity was to like almost defiantly go inside to solve challenges rather than ask anyone else. Like I'm pretty oppositionally defiant. I can't be told what to do. You can't give me advice. I will reject it. I'll be like, no, you don't. No one can tell me what I need, because they can't. No one can tell anyone else what they need. The only person who can say what someone needs is that person. No one else can live inside their skin to say what you need. And I'm super like I am the canary in the coal mine for that stuff. And so part of my response to adversity and challenge was to go, I am going to figure this shit out for myself. And so that's kind of led me here.
Yeah. Well, firstly, let me just start by saying I love how you explain that around the risk taking, the figuring it out. Like, I've worked with families for a really long time, for close to 20 years now. And it's one of the biggest issues that I see often in parenting is our fear for our kids and not letting them take the risks, not letting them figure it out, not letting them feel the hard stuff. And it makes a lot of sense because most of us were raised in ways where we weren't really taught how to feel, taught to lean in. We were good boys and good girls being raised in that way. And I can see a lot of parents now trying to shake that up a little bit to be like, I have to let them stretch a little bit more, but there's a long way to go. And so I see that often with, these next generation of beautiful, wise kiddos coming through, that we actually have made it often so safe in the world for them that they don't have to do hard things if they don't want to. And I think, that's a really big piece that I see in the school I created, but also with a lot of the parents I work with around how important it is for our children to have a little bit of struggle to figure out the tricky things. But going back to when you were a child, in your book, you talk about how you were probably a bit of a misfit as a little kiddo and found it a bit challenging socially, not fitting into school, all those kind of things. And what you say now is like, don't tell me no, because I'm going to find a way to do it. I mean, that is a quality now that I think people just admire in you, and everybody's like, I want to have a bit of your knowing and power and strength. But as a little kiddo, that's pretty hard to navigate. When you look back to being little Gina and having that innate knowing within you, you look back and just think, oh, she probably needed words to help her understand where she was at. Is there anything that you look back and think she would have needed that would have made that a little bit easier for her?
You know what? I actually don't think so. I mean, my mum tried. If I was now a child, I would be diagnosed with so many letters after my name. I would definitely, little Gina would have been taken along and come out with all sorts of letters and probably medication. And I'm really, really, really glad that I didn't. I'm really glad that I didn't, because the particular, and I'm not saying that other people don't need that, because this is just my own personal reaction. I know people for whom it has been life-changing to get those diagnoses. But for me, in my own kind of like blueprint, I guess, I just had to figure it out. And I can remember, and I wrote about this in the book, I can remember being I probably would have been about 10, maybe not even, maybe 7 or 8, and being at school. And when I was at school, I had no idea how to talk to anyone, any kids. I had no idea how to have a conversation. I would just talk to someone for half an hour about the feeding habits of New Holland honeyeaters and then wonder why they ran away when it was obviously fascinating. I had no clue how to ask questions or how to relate. I just didn't know. I wasn't born with those social skills. And so there was nothing in me that actually looked to the kids around me for how to behave to be loved, because nothing worked anyway. And so I can remember being, it was about 7-ish, and the PE teacher got the whole class to walk in a circle in the quadrangle. We're just like, as you do, everyone's walking in a circle. And I stepped outside the circle and I walked in the other direction. I did this on purpose. I mean, it's just the most insanely suicidal thing that you can do as a child with peers, is to deliberately go the other way. I deliberately went the other way. And because I was going the other way, it means I had to look at everybody's faces when I was going the other way. It was the most exposing, raw expression of my personality in that moment. And I can remember there was no part of me that even considered not doing it. But it was just, well, everybody's going in that direction. Well, I'm going to go the other way. And that's what I've done my whole life. And there was another moment when I think I was probably only about 6, when I was being bullied really, really badly in primary school. And I can remember sitting back and just watching everyone and watching the kids and thinking, because I was really into animals, and I was just like, okay, so this is kind of like the zoo. And I remember thinking, oh, right, someone is going to get this. Okay, well, it might as well be me. Someone is going to get this. And the other thing that I thought was, all I need to do to make this stop is to change. And my instant thought was, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I in a way, chose to be bullied rather than change, because my sort of like self-expression, or my sense of self, was so, I guess, strong, that the idea of altering because of what someone else might think was just anathema. So I think that's kind of, I guess, like a soul quality. I don't know. I think I just came in like that.
I hear that, and I think about me as a kid. I wish I had have had the courage to step out, because I could see it, but I wasn't courageous enough to do it. And I look at my own life and think I've always been able to see the game. But it's probably only till I've hit becoming a mother, or kind of, this beautiful stage of my life now where I'm like, yeah, fuck it, actually don't care. And now I'm doing it more. But I look back and think I wish I had have been able to do that. And I think what I see often too is, Gina, you embody such a sense of knowing and presence of, this is who I am. And in the work that I've done for a long time, I see that this is what so many people crave. They crave the deep inner knowing and the deep acceptance of who they are. And I think that's why people just turn to you, because you are living that in such a powerful way. And what is so inspirational about that? And I love that you say it's probably just your soul who just came in and went, we are not here to play along. We're going to do it our way, which is beautiful, which is really, really beautiful. I really honor that courageous part of you.
It has been excruciating.
Yes.
To choose that as a path, as a human, has meant that, I have blown up my life so many times. I have made choices that have resulted in the most, excruciating bloody pain. I have to be able to really land all of that kind of nascent soul story into embodied wisdom, has meant that I've gone in and looked under every single rock in myself to find the places where all the monsters hide, to find where all the unloved parts hide, to find where the bits of me that could be cruel or harsh or judgmental, where they all live, and to be able to hold those parts in awareness and learn whatever they've got to teach. And it's not like they go away, but part of where I can sit calmly in myself is because when the icky, sticky bits start, scuttling around, I don't retreat from them. I don't allow the shame about them to sort of like give them any more power. It's just like, all right, you're up. Okay, I must not feel safe in some way. And so it's been a really, it's been a big and long journey into the underworld, really, to be able to take all of those human stories and learn the lessons from them, and integrate those so that I'm not actually moving from fear through the world. Because I think most of the fear that we feel when we move through the world comes from our internal wounds. It comes from our stories, which we project out in a sense of like, well, if this happens, that's going to happen. And the if this, then that has either been given to us by someone else's story, or it's a result of stuff that we've gone through. And so the more I think we can metabolize our own fear of what's inside, the more we can actually move through the world in a way that creates safety for ourselves and other people, no matter what the situation we're in.
Yeah. What I see in you is you turn towards the pain, whereas most of us turn away. And we've been taught to turn away because that's often what our parents showed us, because that's what they were taught to do. And so most of us were like, let's numb it, let's turn away from it. It's too painful. We just won't talk about it. And yet I see in you that you turn towards it, and you're always like, come on, let's dance. Let's go. We're here. We're going to do this. In your book, We Are the Stars, which I have to say is one of the most beautiful moving books I've ever read, and I wailed, snot crying, like so deeply moved with your book. You are such a storyteller, but you are such a beautiful writer. And I remember, I think I just finished writing my book when you'd written yours. And I remember reading your book and I just thought, oh shit. I mean, I have a story, but I don't classify myself as a great writer. I tell stories in other ways, but I remember just thinking, this is art. Like reading your book, I was just like, oh my God, like so moved by it. And when you talk about Blaise and you talk about your pregnancy and you talk about when she died and you turn towards it, and I have this quote that you said here, because I've said yes to the grief and whatever it asked of me, I've always been bigger than it. It's never been bigger than me. And gosh, that stayed with me so deeply, because what you're speaking to is just saying, I will sit at the feet of one of the most painful, hardest things that we can endure as a human, and I will be with. And gosh, that is everything, isn't it? And it also is painful and scary and all the parts of being human that we often don't want to feel because it is too much. And yet you did it, and the way you talk about it is just so deeply moving. I mean, when I read your words, I was like, it's almost like there was no choice but to turn towards it, because as you're saying, you're like, I'm going to just uncover all these pieces here. I mean, that experience for you, do you feel like life kind of had prepared you to be like, all right, we're turning over this one, we're going to turn over this one as well? I mean, I know I've heard you talk about it as a gift of, what that has been to you. And I've worked in birth, and I've also worked in death, and I see the beautiful veil between both and how profound they are, because they teach us about living. Has that experience taught you now to really deeply live?
Well, yeah, of course. I think that that's one of the gifts of a big grief. I think grief is incredible because it demands to be felt. Grief demands to be felt. Doesn't mean we actually necessarily will feel it, but it is going to knock on the door one way or the other. It's going to turn up with its muddy boots, and it's going to kick at things, and it's going to, kick things over. And it's going to make a mess, and we can't stay in our habits when there's grief. When there's a big grief, our existing habits just don't serve us. And so grief has this incredible power to transform the way we do things. And for me, it's such an invitation to melt and dissolve and let go control and let our vulnerability just pour through, because we don't have a choice. That was my experience with Blaise. The thing that I've spoken about a lot is that when I was going through that, I really felt in the hugeness of the grief of having my daughter die in my arms. Um, I I felt like the pain of that is so huge. It is so unutterable. And in that, I could feel the shape of my heart. Because when every single part of you hurts, when every single fiber and cell in your being is in pain, is hurting, it's like you get to actually map and track the shape of yourself. And so for me, feeling grief, actually tracking the feeling of grief, made me feel the size of my own heart. And the love of a child goes to the edge of the universe. And it's like the realization of like, oh my God, that's the size of my heart. It goes as far as I can feel in that direction and in and out. It is everywhere. That's how big my love is. That's how big my capacity for life is. That's how big my love actually spreads. And for me, there was this amazing revelation that came with that, to be able to see that grief is the flip side of the coin of love, and that we can't actually have one without the other. We cannot love without having grief, because every single thing that we love is going to die. Every single thing that we love is going to leave at some point. It's like woven into the act of love is then the metabolism of the loss of whatever that connection is. And I think love is designed to break us open in this way, and grief is designed to help us integrate it. And so, like, for me, the grief journey became, I mean, awful. Don't get me wrong, it was absolutely awful. But because I said yes to it and I didn't fight it, and I basically, whatever grief was asking of me, I just did it. So sometimes I would be, laughing, sometimes crying, sometimes watching a movie, sometimes having the world's biggest tantrums, sometimes ripping the steering wheel off the car and screaming at the traffic lights. But whatever it was, I just allowed grief to have me and sweep me. And because of that, that's why I say that it was never bigger than me, because I could hold it in my awareness and ride whatever that wave is. And sometimes I was only that much bigger than it. It was it was a hair, but it was enough that it meant that every single time one of those waves came, on the other side, I only felt gratitude. I maybe not, but on the other side, once it had all gone through, I just felt more in love and more connected and more vital and more alive, and I've got more capacity as a result. And so, because that's been going on for 13 years now, I feel like the gift of loving and losing Blaise has just forged me into like being able to trust my capacity to hold anything. Yeah.
Yes.
Love, and just
Yes.
love, and to
Yes.
know how much the human heart can love.
Yes. I love how you explain that about our capacity to hold, because it's so true, isn't it? When we can turn towards something and we can sit in it, the pain, the grief, the betrayal, the hurt, all the things that we've been taught to turn away from, over the other side of it, if we can stay long enough, over the other side is often where the wisdom comes, of
Yeah,
course, right? It's often where we
absolutely.
begin to go, oh, actually, I am all of these pieces. All these pieces exist within me. I mean, I think again, there's so much undoing and unlearning that we've had to do in our culture, that we've moved always towards just be happy, be this, be that, and actually these parts that we sometimes see as the shadow, they're all actually just parts of us still, and they all deserve to have a voice, and they deserve to be turned towards. And when we are courageous enough to feel them, it's quite extraordinary what sits over the other side. And I love how you talk about your capacity to be with anything, because of the willingness to say yes to the things that are really, really hard. I mean, that to me obviously speaks to being in the uncomfortable, which you did with Alone. I mean, you just look like you're having a great time out there. Like I remember watching that thinking, she doesn't want to come home, so she's happy. She's happy here.
I did.
And yet, as humans, and I think again, we've become so desensitized that we are so uncomfortable being uncomfortable, whether that is with our children, whether it's with our partners, whether it's just being physically uncomfortable. I mean, the pieces that are within us often around turning away from that and learning to be in the discomfort. What do you say, or what advice do you give to people when you notice that we're so good at turning away around how to be better with the uncomfortable stuff?
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the things I say is that we're pleasure-seeking, pain-avoiding, meaning-making machines. We move towards that which is comfortable, we contract away from that which is uncomfortable, and we make it all mean something, usually about ourselves. And so, for me, it's like it's handy to see that. It's a handy lens to look at the world and my life through, because it means that I can start to go, well, what am I avoiding? What am I not allowing myself to feel or experience or consider? And then if I do feel or experience and consider those things, what then becomes available? And so our turning away from discomfort is another thing that I see as a product of our culture. If you look at, and I realized this when I was out on Alone, where everything in survival was uncomfortable, every single thing. Like, I was lucky in any day if I had 30 seconds where I actually felt comfort in my body, like everything. And I went, oh yeah, that's right. Like, survival isn't comfortable. We are not actually designed for comfort. What we are designed for is to be stretched to solve challenges. And when we're uncomfortable, that is when we galvanize our resources to solve whatever the challenge is. So discomfort is an invitation to solve something in our world. And then we are designed, once we are comfortable, to conserve energy and integrate. So if there is a moment of comfort, we don't burn any calories in survival. We want to go, oh, great, I've got a moment. I'm just going to like conserve some energy here and build up, because discomfort's going to come again in a minute. But because we have now got a society that does pathologize discomfort, we are fed 10 million different distractions in any moment that are addictive and available, so that we can indulge our aversion for discomfort without even having to think about it. You know, it's just there. Everything is just there to stop us from feeling. If we don't want to, if we get an itch and we just like, oh, what can I do? I can, I'll go to the fridge, I'll get some food, I'll call someone, I'll have a wank, I'll have a joint, I'll have a, fucking shag, whatever it is, because we aren't actually taught how to feel that discomfort and use it. And the thing, again, for me, this comes down again to internal authority and our inner wildness and our instincts. If you look at human history, hunter-gatherer, tribal, nomadic humans had to rely on their instincts. They had to rely on, hello. They had to daily rely on their internal world to be able to solve the challenges of survival. And so everything about culture would support that journey, would support how to use discomfort to solve whatever challenges there are in the environment. But our culture wants to keep us compliant, wants to keep us outraged. It wants to, harvest our life force in a million different ways and to control us so that we're, good little productive creatures. And so, if we did learn how to be with discomfort, we might actually fucking get up and do something about the state of things. But because we haven't been shown and we haven't been taught, we don't know how to do that. And we've just got all of these, addictive, offerings that are guaranteed to stop us and keep us small. And so that's, like, for me, one of the ways I work with my own discomfort is I allow that oppositional defiance to just get me seriously fucking pissed off. I'm like, fuck you for trying to control me. Fuck you for trying to keep me small and compliant. Like, my defiance then comes back and I'm like, no, I won't allow this control. I will put this phone down. I will go outside, even though every bit of me wants to scroll. And then I will feel whatever this feeling is and take responsibility for it enough that I can actually still remain functional. But I think that it is a really, really big ask for most people, because unless you have tools to be with discomfort, it's very, very hard to even begin. We just aren't shown how.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I think also too, the thing that I really notice is discomfort for a lot of people is stillness. And just being quiet and still feels deeply uncomfortable
Yeah,
for
because you
people.
feel stuff. That's
Yeah.
because as soon as you get still, then you actually start to feel what's going on inside. And because we don't have those tools and technologies and ceremonies and rituals and rite of passage and, and the fostering of our creativity and our artistic expression to metabolize our pain and tools of somatic processing and conscious dance and, those kinds of things, because we aren't given any way to actually metabolize the feelings we have inside, as soon as we get still, they rock up. And then it's like where the wild things are. Suddenly, there's just a rampage going on and I don't know what to do with it all. And so then, make it go away, make the whole
yeah.
thing go away.
Yeah. And we were talking before we started recording about just this journey of being older women and menopause and hot flushes and all this stuff. And I have such a yearning as I move through this stage to be quiet. Like, I can't, it is like addictive for me now to just really want that stillness and that quiet. Too many people, I travel a lot for work and I just cannot wait to get home to the trees, to be quiet, to be still, because
it feels like it's medicine, firstly, just for my soul within it now. But reaching this stage of my life just feels like this is the answer, is the deep stillness and the listening, because that's where I feel like I'm transforming into something new. And, we were just touching on before about women as they do this, and if they can do this, then what sits on the other side is this extraordinary leadership and wisdom and power that exists for women, which I think for many generations we've disregarded and pushed down. But there feels like there's something big happening at this time that we're living in now, because women are kind of stepping forward and claiming it in this whole other way. And you said it so beautifully before when we were talking about, you said something about the silver feathers. What did you say about silver feathers or something leading?
I don't know. I said something by the time we've earned these. I don't even know. But it's yeah. I can never say what I
Never
said.
recall what you said. All right. It was something about just powerful. It was something about by the time we've earned these silver feathers, we're standing in this place of leadership. Like you were just talking really about how women have all they need in this stage to really be extraordinary leaders.
Well, actually, for me. So for me, hot flashes are it's like the surfacing of rage. It's like all of the unfelt rage that we've squashed through a lifetime of being good girls just coming up like layer after layer and burning through. And when that happens, it's like it's bringing up and healing so much of all of the ways that women will compress themselves, not just to be loved, but also to be safe, to be able to not, draw too much attention and to be safe. But then in menopause, it's just like, it just comes, doesn't it? You just like, oh, here's another one. And along with all of the amazing changes that happen in menopause, I truly in my bones believe that women get forged in this process to the point where any residual sort of like good girl business has the opportunity to get burned out, and we decenter from men. And I think that there is an actual evolutionary pathway here where women decenter from men and from the male gaze and from, modifying our behavior to be sexually attractive to men. Not that I'm saying that post-menopause I don't want to have sex with men, because I absolutely do. Like, there's those things about like your libido goes. I don't know about that one because mine certainly hasn't. But there's a quality of the way we move through the world as younger women that completely changes once we reach menopause. Because the other thing that I found in menopause, it was like all of a sudden I must have smelled different, because the men that would always like do the like, hello, just stopped seeing me. I was like, what? Wait, what happened here? And and for me, there's also a grief in that. There's a grief for what would have been possible, but there's also a freedom. And so the grieving that we do in menopause, the metabolizing of so much of the programming that we've moved through the world with, it just burns away, and it's like horrible in so many ways, but on the other side of it, we are forged to the point that now we are perfect leaders. I don't know, maybe not perfect leaders, but I feel like we're designed to be leaders on the other side of menopause, that there is an evolutionary quality here that women, once they've gone through menopause, because for heteronormative women, there's been an entire life basically feeling men, and dancing with men and emotionally having to understand men and deal with them. Like to be able to know on the inside all of those qualities, to be able to understand men so well, and to be able to take those strengths with us into postmenopausal life, but also to be able to still retain the compassion and the empathy of the relational way of being in the world that I won't even say is feminine, but almost like matrifocal. It's like that, the qualities of mother, the nurturing qualities of mother, which for me aren't gender-based, but it's just like, what so many of us have walked through the world with, to be able to combine them with the incredible quality of menopause that pretty much every woman says, which is there are no fucks left to give. To take all of that and have brought up and reared and raised and, expressed and learned and lived and died and lived and died, to then be able to move into leadership. And I truly in my bones believe that postmenopausal women are poised and qualified to rule, to lead, not even rule, to lead, to be leaders. Like, I think that that's where we're supposed to be on the other side of this thing. And everything that isn't that just gets stripped away.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, amen. I am like, yes, I feel that in my bones too. Because even as we were talking before about the capacity, like if you have turned towards and you've felt and you've grieved and you've danced and you've done all those things to know that actually what we've been sold is this story of your enoughness actually isn't true, because it's always innate and it's always within, then we become so rock solid. It's very hard to move a woman who has innate knowing within her. It's very hard to move her off her center. And we also, I think, hold that capacity to be able to see, look to the future, to feel into what is happening here, to be intuiting what is going on. I think we really are sitting in this really extraordinary, powerful place of what is possible, which makes me excited for the future, but also for the women that I know who are extraordinary humans and women, and what is possible for what they may do as well. I want to touch on 5 rhythms because I'm a lover of 5 rhythms. I started 5 rhythms. Why I did first encountered 5 rhythms 32 years ago when I lived in this beautiful little spiritual community in Scotland called Findhorn, which was when I was like an 18 or 19-year-old. And these musicians would come along and play this live music, and they'd talk about this 5 rhythm thing. And here's me as like a little young woman just dancing, kind of with my eyes closed, thinking this is amazing. And then I came back to Australia and convinced my friends. I found the cassette tape from Gabriel Roth, and we would put it on and we'd dance to it. 5 rhythms has been a beautiful accompaniment through my life in many, many different phases, especially when I was going through a massive kind of trauma healing and PTSD. 5 rhythms was like my savior. I'd go once a week and just kind of leave it on the dance floor. Now, you are such a beautiful, you talk about 5 rhythms in just such a gorgeous, beautiful way. I mean, how has 5 rhythms shifted or changed your life? Or just even, not even that, just dance and movement. What has it given you?
Yeah, well, when I was in my 20s and I was, straight out of a pretty traumatic, school life, and I hit Sydney to go to uni and ended up on Oxford Street in the 90s, which was like Studio 54. It was this amazing time where a whole bunch of things came together for a decade that was extraordinary, and nothing like it has happened before or since. And I was there. I was in it. I was immersed in it. And so I ended up being swept into this world of queer culture. And, there were people, my friends were dying of AIDS. There were so many people dying of AIDS. And so we'd be going to funerals, and then that night there would be whoever the lover was with the urn of ashes, and which would get poured on the dance floor, and we'd all dance in the ashes of one of our friends and celebrate. And it was this, like, so much life and love and grief and joy and pain. And I had friends who were getting beaten up, gay friends who were getting beaten up or ending up in hospital or even killed for homophobia. And then there were these incredible gatherings where the whole community would come together, and there was creativity of expression and all of these things. And I found a podium. I found many podiums, and I just found dance, and all I wanted to do was dance. And now I look back and I can see that I was pretty much processing all the pain and loneliness of my strangeling childhood, and I just danced and danced, and people would be partying, they were getting shit faced, and it's not like that I didn't, but all I really cared about was being able to dance. So I would go out and then I would find a podium or 2 or 3, and I would dance for like 7 or 8 hours, full throttle, 3 days a week. I was so fit, and I just love it. My body, I was like, I had the body of an athlete, and that same sense of just pure physical joy at being able to express whatever movement wanted to come through my body. My body had the capacity and the fitness and the flexibility to be able to do it. And so I reckon I just ditched lifetimes worth of crap by dancing and dancing and dancing. But it wasn't conscious, it wasn't like 5 Rhythms where it's a meditation where we bring our awareness to our movements. For me, it was my wild life force just expressing itself in the best way it could. But it planted the seeds. And then when I discovered 5 Rhythms, it was like I already had all of that framework inside, but now I discovered how to use it as a somatic processing tool. And the beauty about 5 Rhythms is that it basically follows the energetic pattern that underlies basically energy moves through matter in waves, shall we say, and that's a very simplistic way of explaining it. And the energy that moves through a human body when we've got something stuck and we need to move it is a wave as well. Like we might start to feel a bit icky and a bit weird, and it's like there's not much energy yet, but it's like there's something that's coming up, and then if we turn our attention to it, it's going to magnify. And in the 5 Rhythms, then if we give that movement, like if we start to consciously express what we're feeling, that wave builds and the energy moves and starts to come out until we get to like a mosh pit, almost frenzy, the chaos of the letting go of whatever it is. But we're feeling it all the way through and digesting it and processing it. And that then clears this giant fur ball. It's like coughing up a fur ball. And on the other side of that, now there's something that's actually clear inside us. It's like transformation happens from the inside out, change from the outside in. But transformation is when we take something inside and bring our awareness all the way through it enough that it breaks down into tiny, tiny pieces, which we can get rid of. And then we're bigger, and then we get to choose what we take in. And what we get to take in is more life force and more clarity and more focus, more passion, more creativity, more capacity. And our world gets bigger as we then dance into what's called lyrical, which is the integration phase. And then that wave, which has crashed to bubbles, now moves to stillness, which is what you're talking about with what how you want to be in the world now. And in stillness, we have our awareness that goes out as far as we can in any direction. But it's actually, it's almost like it's in the void. It's in the archetypal. It's in the relationships of life and death. It's in, being able to feel the tree, but also the ant that's on the tree, being able to feel the last breath of some old man dying, but also then hear the cry of a baby being born and have all of that inside. Stillness is when we bring it all home and become more, become almost like the breath of the universe dancing through us. And so that's a wave. And what I love about the 5 Rhythms is that you can, in a very short amount of time, like an hour or 2 hours, you can take something that has just been like this horrible bit of ick, and you can work with it and you can digest that part. And there's always more, but it gives a really practical and real tool to be able to do the thing that our culture finds very hard, which is actually process what's going on inside. Our culture teaches us to think our feelings, but nothing happens, nothing changes when we think our feelings. It's only when we actually feel them and allow them through that something new can come on the other side. And so I love 5 Rhythms because it gives such a beautiful vehicle for that, but also it isn't prescriptive. There are no moves. There's the general guidance of the different rhythms, but within that, your body moves how your body moves. And the other reason I love it is because as a teacher, I love music. I'm a musician. I love. I'm a sound file, an audio file, but also those years of dancing endlessly in nightclubs and dance parties in the 90s means that I have internalized trance music. Like it is in my bones. And so when I'm DJing for one of these classes, it's like I'm in, it's like I love it. I love finding the perfect bit of music that is going to help to invoke and evoke these kinds of transformations. And I make playlists that my own pleasure really, that that basically take someone through that journey. So it's almost impossible not to move because the music's going to take you there.
I'm like, let's go dance. Like you're talking, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Two of my kiddos are overseas at the moment, and they're in I think they're in Bosnia. Oh no, they're somewhere, and they've been at this festival, which was like this amazing dance party for 2 days, and they were sending me clips of them there dancing music, and like I get it. It's why young people come together to be part of the collective, to move, to dance. It's a different vibe than what we're talking about with Five Rhythms. But they sent me these video clips, and I was just watching and listening to it. And I remember in my own bones when I was young going to similar things like that, that feeling that was extraordinary of thousands of people being there, moving to a beat. Yes, maybe there were drugs and maybe there was music and all that kind of stuff, but that tribal piece of movement and feeling it in your bones is so profound, isn't it? And, I observe the older we get, the older we can often get so much more rigid and stuck. And, I'm like, I think a lot of things could be healed if we all just put on a lot of loud music and danced and moved, because, what we're holding on to can actually be shifted so joyously if we're willing to go there and actually do it. And so I love that my young people are out there doing their thing, and feeling that. And I'm like, enjoy it. It's extraordinary being part of something like that, especially just feeling yourself at those ages.
I think it is part of our human birthright. As long as humans have been around fires, I'm sure we've been dancing around them. And that thing that you're saying about, a collective, a group of people and a beat. So when we're in a beat, we synchronize, and it's like a pulse. And so when you've got 100, 200, 300, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, and they're all in the same pulse, it's like that sense that we have of like, I'm different, I'm me, you're you, we're separate, I'm alone. That melts because that beat and that pulse just reaches through all of those differences and unites all of the humans who are there. And I think that that's, again, it's an evolutionary thing. It's a way that human tribes and villages get to weave themselves together. So there will always be rituals with a pulse. There will always be rites of passage where there is a group that gets to dance in this way, that isn't just just getting shit-faced and bouncing around, which is fabulous, but is actually rooted in myth and archetype and our kind of like collective history as humans, and is again a vehicle for transformation, but also weaving together disparate human stories into an experience of oneness where we remember then that the total is greater than the sum of its parts.
Mm. I feel like I'm just I feel like I'm getting a beautiful philosophy lesson or something sitting here with you. I mean, everything you're saying, I'm like, oh my God, it's all of it. Like, it's the connectedness that we're all deeply longing for. Yet we actually often shut ourselves off from, and we've been conditioned, I think, to believe that we're alone and to believe that we're separate, but we're actually not. And as you talk about music and as you talk about that in that way, I mean, it's one of those profound things that helps us to see that we are all actually connected. We're all human. We all have blood running through our veins. We all have these same capacities to feel and be. And, yet sometimes I look at the world that we're living in and thinking, how do we get so far from where we're meant to be, at this point in time?
I mean, to finish off, I would love to ask you, what do you think when we're looking at humans right now? What do you think that they're forgetting? What is it that you would love humans to remember?
It's a really big question, because, the longer I sit in this and research it and write about it and dive into it, the more I see that our culture got lost. Culture's job is to weave the stories that humans can sit in and live in, to be able to express themselves and have a life that works and is in balance. That's culture's job, is to give us the survival stories. And our culture stopped prioritizing connection and getting our needs met, and it started prioritizing productivity, and human needs and connection went to the bottom of the pile. And all of the decisions that have happened, especially in the last 5,000 years, but really probably the last 10, that have led to where we are now, have been a gradual breaking strand by strand of those ceremonies and technologies and tools and strategies and rituals of connection that kept us alive for 350,000 years as Homo sapiens, and millions of years before that. And so what I would like, my dream would be for people to remember that they're wild, to remember that the vast majority of the information in our DNA isn't from this culture that we think is permanent, but it's not. It's a tiny blip in our human history. For most of the time we've been humans, we have known what it is to be part of wild nature instead of apart from it. We have known what it is to live as caretakers, so that we leave everything and everyone better than we found them. It's to be able to see every single living thing as kin, and to know that there's no hierarchy of life in nature, that we're not special or important, or everything is special and important. And this lens it's actually embedded in us. It's embedded in our DNA, but our 5,000 years of forgetting means that it is a long way away for most people. So I guess if I was going to say anything, I would ask that people, like anyone, listen to the wild voice inside them and allow themselves to be drawn outside, and to let their eyes go soft, and to let nature in, to become receptive. And there's a battery that we get to plug into, the battery of wild nature, that is designed to nourish us and feed us and sing to us and help us to feel at home. And part of the forgetting has been to tell us the story that it's dangerous, that it's dangerous. And what I would love people to remember is that this is who we are. We can't not be wild, because it's what we are. And the more that starts to surface, and I believe it is, I think the more people will start to choose to make the choices away from the devastating and dangerous stories of our culture, to find their own myths, their own stories, and their own, I don't know, follow their own paw prints into the heart, to be able to discover what it is they're really here to do.
May we all be more wild. I love that. I love that so much. May we remember our wildness. I wonder, when your time is finished on this earth and people look back at Gina Chick, what is the sentence you hope they say? When they
I don't know.
She was wild.
I don't know. I really don't have that, that sense of legacy. I don't, I think that every single human has a gift, and every single gift is exactly as important as every other. I don't think there's a hierarchy of what we can offer either. I think that all of us can offer what is of us, and all of that is necessary. And some of it is more visible. There are some people whose gifts bring them into visibility and recognition and projection and everything that goes with that. And it's easy to then assign worth to that. But for me, I would rather that we see in the, like, there's no hierarchy of life in nature. There's also no hierarchy of worth in humans. And that whatever someone's offering is, it might be to, to grow things in the garden. It might be to bring parenting, like to just be able to be, just to be able to say, like, my parenting took my entire soul and life and my goodness and my gifts and my challenges, and that was what I came here to do. And that whether or not it's recognized, it is still valid. And this sense of, worth through external recognition, I think it's like, it just gets in. It's just so sneaky. And so, yeah, that would be the other part of my prayer, that everybody realizes that whatever their gift is, it is vital. And if they don't do it, then who will?
Yeah, I love that. I often think about we are all extraordinary and ordinary. Like, I often think about there's no, yeah, I love what you're saying there, that the hierarchy, it actually doesn't exist, because actually we are all connected just in our absolute humanness. Gina, what would you like people to know about what you've got going on as we finish up? Is there anything you would like them to know? Have you got any things coming up that you would like people to know about?
Well, I'm sort of up to my absolute silver feathers in writing the next book at the moment. So the muse and I are in dialogue, often arguments, arm wrestles, absolute domestics, with then periods of complete love and adventure. So at the moment, that is taking a lot of my attention. My book, We Are the Stars, just got released in the States, and so I went over and I spent some time in New York to get that launched, which was great. And it's a new cover, which I love. Beautiful version from Andrews McMeel, and so that's great. So if anyone's got any friends who are in the States, you can let them know that they can get We Are the Stars now, and also on audiobook, and I'm reading it in the audio, and I sing all the songs as well. So apart from writing the next book, what am I doing? I think I've got a retreat, a women's retreat, one of my Heart of the Huntress retreats coming up this December in Tassie, and I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be great. And then next year, once I've got this book out and flying free, I'm going to start doing more retreats, like running more retreats. And I love the women's retreats as well. Like, I really love working on women's internal authority, their power, their strategies, their the shadows, using archery as a metaphor for power and getting needs met, and 5 rhythms every day. And it's like, it's intense, but it's also amazing. So yeah, I feel like I've been on this amazing ride since Alone, and once this second book is out, then I can start to move back into more teaching and more 5 rhythms, and then write the next books as well.
Thank you so, so much for being wildly you, for standing in a place that is not afraid to feel deeply, that gives all of us permission to do the same. I thank you for your incredible wisdom and your powerful life, which I think we often need to see examples of what is possible in the world. And I think you stand in such a beautiful place of possibility for many. Thank you for your courage to live the life you have lived, and for the storytelling that you do that touches so many people's hearts. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. I haven't done a podcast probably for a year. This is fun, getting to have a chat, wrestle with some ideas, and tease things out a bit. So it's been an absolute privilege and pleasure, and it's really lovely, whoever you are listening. It's lovely to meet you, my unmet friend across the airwaves. And I wish you so much love in your dance of life, whoever you are and wherever you be.
Gina, and thank you, everybody. Don't forget to be human.
Thanks, Lael.
Thanks for sharing this time with me. You can find my book, Own Your Story, at bookshops, or listen to the audiobook on Audible. I even read it myself. You can stay connected with Humans Being on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. We love to hear from you, so please leave a comment, question, or contemplation. And visit my website, laelstone.com.au, where you'll find lots of great resources and courses for you to explore.
This podcast is produced by Nigel Carboon, recorded by the crew at We Make Online Videos, designed by Mike Gale, and our original music is created by Josh Reed. Humans Being is produced on the lands of the Bunurong and Wadawurrung people. We pay respect to the unique and diverse cultures and to elders past, present and future. Until next time, stay connected and don't forget to be human. The ads you hear at the end of this episode are served by our podcast platform and may not reflect the views of Humans Being or Lael Stone.